I haven't decided yet. I will say, as I stated in my remarks, I'm concerned. I'm really, really concerned. I've been in Congress since my 17th year. I was in the state Senate for 2 years. Whether it's a curse or a blessing, I live in, just outside of Warren, Ohio. My wife's a school teacher. We got 3 kids. We are immersed in the Northeast Ohio economy, the challenges, and I work in DC, so I see what I've tried to communicate to you about what's coming, and every day I get more concerned that we are unprepared and not ready for the challenges we face as a country, for the challenges the planet faces, and we're not taking advantage of opportunities that I think could be out there with the right leadership. So I'm looking very, very closely at it. When Sherrod Brown decided not to run, I started to look a little closer at it because I felt like Sherrod was talking about the issues that many of us are concerned about workers and just falling behind. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that what happened to General Motors a few weeks back didn't have a really profound effect on me. Losing the final shift at a plant that has been in Northeast Ohio since 1966. At one time had 16,000 workers, now it's idle. The supplier, Delphi, used to supply that plant. It's 13,000, now it's down to 0. We've seen the economy change here, and I really don't hear anyone talking about it, to be quite honest with you, in a way that's going to position us for the future. So I think in the next few weeks I'm going to make a decision one way or the other. I'll make sure you're the first to know.
Following up on the theme of your presentation, question from the audience. How do we persuade Republicans in the Senate or in our neighborhoods to acknowledge that our division only helps our enemies? How do we counter the propaganda from faux news?
It's not anything glamorous. I don't have any real magic wand that could help with this. It's going to take time and effort to sit down and really listen to each other. And sometimes you're going to have to be the person that is going to have to say to them, I love you. That is the biggest crock of BS I've ever heard in my life. But it's got to be honest. Like, these conversations have got to be real. They've got to be honest. And what I've found in trying to have these conversations, both with my colleagues and with my family members who are way more conservative than me, that if you talk long enough, if you listen to each other, you can probably come to some consensus about because what's in their minds and what's in your mind is going to dominate the first few minutes of any conversation. You've got to get through that. Everybody's got to get past their talking points about what they read on their website, and let's start talking about how we solve the problem. And I would almost guarantee you that we could come to some consensus. And again, you don't have to agree with someone 100% of the time. I'm sure some of you are married in this room, and you recognize that you can have a perfectly healthy, robust relationship with your spouse and agree with them about 70% of the time. My wife disagrees with me a lot more than 70%, but you get along because you care about each other, because at the end of the day, your interests are the same. The country's going in the wrong direction, so listen. I would just say deeply, deeply listen, pay attention. Don't talk to someone and think about what your response is going to be. Listen to them. And then ask them to listen to you. And I think you can get through it. I'm not saying this is some big kumbaya moment like we got to have as a country. But I am saying the threats are real. The threats are real. And when your greatest adversary in the world is hoping and praying that you keep going down the road you're going down and fighting and being divided, then it's time for us to call a timeout and reevaluate and start saying, okay, we're on the same page here, and listen to each other and then come to some conclusion. It's going to be helpful to have leaders, which is one of my big criticisms of the president, is I do feel like he goes out of his way to intentionally divide. And I don't think that's helpful.
This question from the audience: what's going to happen to President Trump?
I have no idea. I really don't. I for one, have suspended, to the extent I can, any professional judgment. I feel that the Mueller team and the Mueller report will come soon enough. He has an amazing team. He's a Republican. It's a Republican administration. Anybody who knows him knows that he's on the up and up, and he's just a hard-nosed law enforcement man. And I think he's going to give us an honest assessment. He's a patriot. He's going to give us what we think, and some people may be disappointed, some people may not, and we're going to let that play out. But I have absolutely no idea. I do say, as a commentary, I feel the president's got to start paying more attention to what's going on. I just, not trying to make a political statement, I'm just saying he does not pay attention to what the problems in the country are. He's not, he's not focused on it. And do we need border security? Absolutely. I'll sit down with you right now and we'll work something out. We gotta have strong borders. We gotta have safety. We gotta know who's in the country, right? And if there's a barrier in certain places, which I have voted for in the past, and experts say you need another one right there, you can put it there. But when it's 2019 and you have aerostats that we make in Akron, and you have, all kinds of different technologies, those need to be implemented. And when you have, this is a perfect example, when you have 90% of the drugs that come into the United States coming through the legal ports of entry, like in El Paso, that means you need more dogs and bodies and technology in those legal ports of entry. And when the fentanyl is coming in from China through the United States Postal Service, you need a more robust data analytics operation trying to figure out where this fentanyl is coming from. That's where the money should be spent, and the whole conversation has been dominated around the wall, because I believe, in my opinion, that the president thinks he can benefit politically from that argument. And that's great if you're just having an argument. It's not great when the government's shutting down, and China's breathing down our throats, and Russia's trying to do what it's doing, and we're 20th and 28th in math and science. And 51% of the kids who go to public schools in America live in poverty. And we're blowing all kinds of money in the healthcare system. Like, focus.
A follow-up on that. So the president unveiled his budget, released his budget, or at least the grand 40,000-foot picture of his budget today. Calls for $8 billion for the wall, but significant cuts in other areas of the government. How pessimistic or optimistic are you about reaching a budget deal with your counterparts in the Senate, and something that the president is going to sign without this leading to another government shutdown in the end?
I'm a little concerned. I don't know if we've made a whole lot of progress. I do think the Senate, if the president doesn't, put a stake in the ground, or draw a line in the sand, however you want to say it, around the border wall, that I think we could probably get a deal. But it's almost to my point. What was all on the news feeds today? How much money on the border wall, right? Now, all of this stuff going on, your news feed shut up. Hey, the president wants another $8 billion for the border wall. We're talking about, more police and fire in Akron. How do we get more money to the schools or whatever? And so I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard to tell. I don't even think people that are right around the president in his administration know how he's going to react from moment to moment, and that's been pretty clear for the last couple of years. I will say this, that as a Democrat, the problems that I laid out, we have to reform our government. I mean, we can't, as Democrats, defend the kind of waste and bureaucracy and inefficiencies that are in our current government system now. We waste about $50 billion a year in the Medicare program. That's $1 billion a week. Now, by any accounts, that's a lot of money that could be spent on, education, healthcare, research, all of these kind of things. We have a healthcare system that just manages disease. We don't talk about health, we don't talk about food, we don't talk about agriculture as a part of an integrated system around health. And so money just gets blown. The incentives are all wrong. And so my point is that we have these different conversations about budgets. We've got to have a full frontal attack on getting the government to be up to speed with technology and how to administer programs in a way that's clear, efficient, and effective. And if the programs aren't working, get rid of them. If they are working, grow them, build them up, and let's get moving.
On Lordstown, thousands of able-bodied people were put out of work in Lordstown last week. At the same time, hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses lament the impossibility of hiring and keeping good workers. Why can't all those auto workers retool and fill those jobs?
Well, again, another broken system is workforce training and workforce development, and how we handle unemployment in the United States versus how they handle it in some other countries. We've got to move from a system that's very fragmented into an integrated system that promotes and enhances lifelong learning. And engaging workers at places like General Motors Lordstown well before the plant is going to close down. And I'll just give you one example on kind of how we need to do this. I have a bill called, I'm calling it the Worker Bill of Rights. And basically it helps workers transition. So if you get a huge cut in wages as you move to another job, there's wage insurance there for you to make sure that the fall isn't too steep. And then we pay for you to go get retrained. I think here's another example. We've got to have the business community involved in this. There's no way we're going to be able to retrain workers for the jobs that are filled if you don't have the business community involved. And I think we need to look at an approach like they do in Germany. In Germany, if there's a downturn in the workforce, instead of giving someone unemployment and they go home and they get unemployment and they have to go look for another job, you actually stay at the company you're working at and you get basically unemployment, same kind of compensation, maybe 70% or more of your income. The company pays the other 20 or 30%, and you come to work and then you get retrained so that company is ready when the economy comes back. They're prepared for the next product. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, because the biggest problem we have, and many of you in this room know this, when someone falls out of the workforce, they lose their skills, it's very, very difficult to get them back in. And those are the kind of systems we need to try to cultivate.
A follow-up on the Lordstown question, how likely or is unlikely is it for GM to retool that facility for a new product line? Is there any information that you have that we may not be aware of at this point?
I don't have any news. I will say that we sent a letter to President Trump. There's a program in the Department of Energy that's called the Manufacturing Conversion Program, and we sent him a letter, Marcy Kaptur and I sent him a letter asking him to beef that account up in his budget. I haven't seen the budget yet today, whether or not he did that. And we may try to put some money in there that helps companies convert over to a new kind of manufacturing, a more advanced kind of manufacturing. I think that's really important. I don't have any ideas what General Motors is doing. They're playing it very, very close to the vest. I will tell you, I think there's a lot of opportunity around electric vehicles. So today there's about 1 to 2 million electric vehicles. And by 2030, there's going to be 30 million electric vehicles. And that does not include the charge stations. that we're gonna have to completely, either add them to the gas stations or put new ones up, which someone told me, and I haven't verified this, so don't hold it against me if it's wrong, but that the global investment for charge stations in the next 10 to 15 years is gonna be $30 trillion. 30 trillion. And here's what I'm saying to all of you. China dominates 40% of the electric vehicle market today. We have 20%. We should be saying, can we agree on electric vehicles? Right? I mean, that doesn't seem to me like we should have a big fight over it. I think environmentalists would like it. I would think people in the free enterprise system would like it. I think workers would like it, so we cut them in on a deal. We're gonna make 28 million of these things in the next 12 years, and we got to do all the charge stations, and that's going to be a huge investment. How do we come together as Americans to say we're going to dominate this market? That's the goal. We're going to dominate it. Now we're going to dominate the battery market, so we can make sure we make the batteries here that are going to take the charge from 300 miles to 600 miles. Now we're moving. Now you're creating jobs. You try to direct some of the incentives to places like Northeast Ohio that have seen a lot of job loss over the last 30 years. You can do that with the tax code. You can do that with the opportunity zones. You can do that with a lot of different things. And bring that investment here. China dominates 60% of the solar panel market. I'm telling you, we're falling behind. We can't keep going down this road. And so these public-private partnerships are critical to get us ahead of the game. And I'll tell you, we will out-innovate China if we get our act together. We will. We've got the best engineers and technologists here, and they want to come here, and they want to get educated here. We need to make sure that the best and brightest, through the immigration reform, go to school here, get a PhD here, and then we stamp welcome to the United States of America on the back of that PhD so they can work for our companies here and create jobs here. But if we come together, we can start dominating these industries and creating good middle-class jobs for people in places like Northeast Ohio.
If you haven't had a chance to fill out your question yet, here's the last call. We still have a handful of questions here that we want to get through. This one from the audience: what kind of immigration reform would you like to see?
Well, that's a big part of it. I do think we start with security. I actually am offering a bill to say that we need to put a commission together of experts to tell us exactly how much and where we need to spend money on border security. So technology, barriers, this, that, ports. Let's put a group of Democrats and Republicans, former secretaries of defense, former national security people, former immigration people, all together, and let Democrats have a handful, Republicans have a handful, and then tell us what the top strategies are for securing the border, which I will say includes engaging the world, because these people leaving Central America aren't just on a party trip. These stories are horrific of families having to leave those countries where gangs are basically running the countries, and they're putting their kids into either sex slave trade or gangs. The boys go into gangs. They're killing the parents. And imagine as a parent that, people, I see and read some of these clips of people saying, what kind of parents sending their kid on, giving somebody $500 to take their kid up through Mexico, try to make it to the United States, 50 other people. What kind of parent would do that? Obviously, the kind of parent that has no other choice. Put yourself in that position where it's either you stay and your kids get put into the sex trade, or you hope that they can take a long shot run at landing here. So part of an comprehensive immigration plan needs to be putting United States AID, putting the State Department in some of these countries to help secure them there. Not that we could make everything right, but stabilize the country enough with some millions of dollars before they end up on our border in these situations. So we got to do a better job at that. And I can't remember what country it is. The Trump administration doesn't even have an ambassador in one of the countries. That's what I'm saying, he's not focused. That's part of it. I think we do a pathway to citizenship. I think we get people integrated into the country. Over time, I think they pay a fine. I think they have to pay back taxes. But you work a path to get them into the country and recognize that all accounts, all studies show that a plan for comprehensive immigration reform will lead to a 1.3 or 1.7% increase in our gross domestic product. Immigration is at the end good for the economy, but if it's hard passing that. That's why I said we just got to be thoughtful. It's hard passing that if wages are stagnant over the last 30 years. So the point is, electric vehicles, solar panels, dominate these markets, cut these middle-class workers in on the deal, get their wages up, and people will be less inclined to worry about the issue of immigration if they're at work with a secure job, secure wage, secure retirement, and health care for their family. That immigration issue becomes less of a concern if everybody's working.
Earlier in your prepared remarks, you were talking about China building islands and militarizing them. This question from the audience: China has a stronger Navy in the Pacific than the U.S., and Australia is concerned about our deficiency. What are our plans to build the Navy and Pacific defense?
We are in the process of building more submarines, which are expensive. I think they're a couple $1 billion a piece. We're in the process of building them. This is also why we've got to have good relationships with other countries, because yes, China is building out. Our strength has always been, and will continue to be, hopefully, is our relationships that we have with other people. So we're working with Norway, we're working with India, we're working with Japan, we're working with other countries in a variety of ways, including and especially the military training, to be able to kind of monitor and protect and prevent a lot of expansion that's happening with China. So we've got to make these investments. And again, I would just say, we spend a lot of money on defense. We've got to make sure that the Pentagon is streamlined. It's got to be running extremely efficient. And at the same time, we still need nuclear, at least as a deterrent. We still need planes, we still need ships, we still need tanks, we still need trucks, we still need bullets, we still need men and women to go into the military, we still need submarines and battleships, we need satellites, we need special forces, and this is an expensive proposition. And as we are retreating out of the world, who is moving into the world? China is. And as we move out, they're moving in. And when you talk about some of the raw materials they're getting their hands on and they're signing these long-term contracts, those raw materials are essential for the phone you have, for our ability to communicate, our satellites, our defense capabilities can all be affected if we don't have the raw materials to be able to build some of these things. It's a long-term strategy, and submarines are a part of it, and I think tariffs and all that are a part of it. But we need a grand strategy that invests in the United States, grows the economy, dominates these industries, where we have a robust defense, but we're also beating them economically because we're investing in education, research, and get them chasing us around 5G and these other things instead of us chasing them.